Hey, my name is Shelly, and this is my channel, Shell Space. Okay, so today's video is going to be a bit of a September wrap up and then some recent reads and just kind of go from there. September was an interesting month. My September MBR video said I was going to do a Star Wars themed, reading month. That didn't happen. I mean, I did read some of the books that I said I was going to read. But overall, I just kind of went with what I was feeling, and it wasn't space opera books at the time. But also, I DNF'd a lot of books. Well, not DNF'd, I soft DNF'd. So I just wasn't feeling them at the time. So I have quite a few books to talk about. Plus, I want to touch upon what I'm kind of reading now and what I've read in October so far. So let's start with September. I'm going to start with my least favorite to my favorite of September. So we'll start with my least favorite. I feel like this is going to make so many people upset. Okay, deep breath. My least favorite was Dark Age. I tried reading this book, I think 3 separate times, and I was finally able to complete it. I was finally able to read it. But this particular time that I read it, took me a full month to read. And for me, even if I'm listening to audiobook, that's quite a while. I mean, maybe if it was reading it just physically, but I was listening to the audiobook. I don't know if Red Rising's for me, guys. I liked the original trilogy. I liked the narrative in the original trilogy. But I feel like in this second series or this continuation, I'm not sure if it's continuation series or whatever, now that there's more POVs, I really think that the narrative style really needs to change from first to third person. I feel like it's kind of choppy and it just doesn't work for me. I personally don't like that, so that's probably why it doesn't work for me. But overall, that wasn't my problem with it. My problem was that it was just so dark and so long and so graphic, unnecessarily graphic, to the point where I'm just really? You just described it that way? I think at one point, this is not a spoiler, but at one point they were describing a beheading and they raised the head and the spine cord was hanging down. That's really not necessary, is it? But the big issue I had with this was there was a plot device that Pierce Brown used towards the end of the book that I fucking despise. I hate that plot device. It's unnecessary. I get it. It's brutal for the shock factor, but that's what it's for. And I wanted to throw this book across the room. I had enough, but I pushed through and I finished. And I don't know if I'm going to finish on with the series. Maybe I'll change my mind once this kind of settles down and I kind of forget about it a little bit. Maybe I'll go on with Lightbringer, but I don't know. It's not that I hate the series all. I don't hate it. I actually like it. 2 of my favorite characters are in this series, and unfortunately it's not Darrow because we'll not talk about him. But yeah, 2 of my favorite characters are in this series, and I absolutely adore them. But yeah, I don't know how to explain it. I just didn't enjoy it. So I ended up giving this book 3 stars on IMDb. Personally, I would have gave it 1 star for my enjoyment factor, but it was well written. It did have some things I liked about it, so I ended up giving it 3 stars. So yeah, so the next book I want to talk about is Brandon Sanderson's Bands of Mourning. This is the 3rd book of Wax and Wane, and in the Mistborn era too. We're continuing on with the story. The world's getting bigger. We're kind of getting a glimpse of from era 1, so some characters are mentioned. But there's a lot of things that they brought back from the first trilogy that I really, really loved, and they brought it into this one. And honestly, I don't really care too much about the plot as of now. I'm just yeah, it's okay. It is what it is. Honestly, I think it would be an awesome movie. These would be awesome, entertaining movies. But for my personal preference, the storyline is just not, for me. But I absolutely love the characters, all of the characters, with the exception of Wax. He's a bit dry, but I guess that's just who he is. I love them all. I love the sisters. I cannot remember their name right now. I love Wax. I love another character that I don't want to mention. They are all fantastic. And that's what I'm here for. That's what I want to read this series for. So I'm going to continue on with my Mistborn, kind of read through, and I'm going to continue on with Secret History, probably in November, and then Lost Metal in December. Where are we? Yeah, December. So I'm very excited. Yeah. So I gave this about 4 stars. So the next book I read was The Three-Body Problem by Xian Liu. I'm terrible at pronouncing it. Some people say Shishan, some people say Xian. So I'm just going to say by this amazing author. Okay, so The Three-Body Problem is a very interesting book. It's about first contact in China, and we have 2 different time periods, I guess. So we have one in the 1960s during the Chinese Cultural Revolution, which was absolutely horrible, and I really read up on it after reading this book, and horrible, like a horrible time. Anyways, so during the Chinese Revolution, and then now like modern time, and we follow like basically there's 2 main POVs. There's other POVs along the way, but mostly it's just 2 main POVs. We have an astrophysicist in the 1960s as a female, and she had a lot of like heart-wrenching things that happened to her in the past, and then she finds herself at this like weird research facilities. And then the future one, there's a gentleman, and he does, what is his actual title? I can't remember, but he does nanotechnology, and then some weird stuff happens, and he's now falling down this rabbit hole to figure out what is happening. And these stories are connected. I really enjoyed the idea of the story. I really thought that the thought process was stellar. I really liked the history lesson and like the fresh perspective it gave me. But there was this one plot device that was used that I kind of got bored of really quick. And it takes up a big chunk of the book. And I'm not going to say what it is because it will be kind of spoilery. But I felt like the pacing was a bit all over the place because of that. Although I did like the strange things that came with that plot device, overall, I just, it didn't grasp me as much as I want to. But I'm extremely interested in picking up the next book in the series. So overall, I gave this book about I think I gave it 4. I gave it 4 stars. My overall enjoyment was about 3 stars, but the idea, the execution, the writing was a 5-star book. So I just kind of like averaged it out. So yeah, very interesting. A very good read. Completely switching gears, I picked up The Daughter of No World by Carissa Broadbent. Earlier this year, I read The Serpent and the Wings of Night and the following book by Carissa Broadbent. And I did not really enjoy The Serpent and the Wings of Night. I'm not a vampire girl. That was really all the craze about 20 years ago, 15 years ago. And, I had enough of it back then. So to revisit that was just like, oh, okay, here we go again. But this book, I am super happy to say, was really good. This is titled as a romantasy, but honestly, it's more of a fantasy with a romantic subplot. There is a romance there, but it really takes side to the actual overarching storyline and characters. Okay, so let's talk about what this is about. So basically, this is about in a world where there are sorcerers and different factions of sorcerers. And this particular girl is what is called fractured. So she is like almost like albino, but with like patches of like other skin color. And she's basically a slave in the beginning. And then one thing leads to another, and some bad stuff happens. But then she finds herself at this magical school because she has some budding abilities. Because she's older, she gets this like, I guess, retired sorcerer to train her. Although he is not very old, he's young, but a lot of bad stuff has happened to him. And so he's like really, really grumpy and he just doesn't want to do it. And then one thing leads to another, and then something massive really happens to her, which I loved. I loved it so much. I know it's kind of bad because it's like not a good thing, but it was very well done. And then because of this, she is now thrown into this world that she knows very little about. And there's a lot of politicking and there's a lot of backstabbing and you don't know who to trust. And then obviously the budding romance. I really liked it and I am very interested in continuing on. The one thing I have to say is the reason why this book wasn't higher was because the main character, to me, was too arrogant. I mean, she's been shit on her entire life. That usually builds low self-esteem. I mean, usually, not always, I guess. But this character was just so arrogant. She just walked in every situation and owned it. And to me, that just seemed kind of like you've been beat down your entire life. It is what it is, but she kind of annoyed me once in a while. So besides that, I think I gave this book about 3.5 stars. It wasn't quite 4-star, but I can definitely see the sequels being just up there because they just look bigger and more epic and grander. So yeah, if you're wanting to read romantasy but kind of lighter on the romance, check out this book. Okay, so we're getting to the 5 stars now. The first 5-star book was How Do You Live by Ginzaburo Yoshino. And this book took me a really long time to read, like a little too long. I mean, it's not a big book and it's not complicated by any means. For me, it was a me problem because I'm not really a contemporary fiction person and I'm such a bad mood reader that I need to be in the mood to read contemporary fiction. And so it took me a little while to get through this, but I enjoyed it thoroughly when I was in the mood for it. This is basically about a boy named Copper who lives in Japan in the 1930s, and his father died a couple years before, and his younger uncle, or like young uncle, is basically taking him under his wing and kind of helping him navigate becoming a little bit older, turning into an adult. So each chapter follows like a stage in Copper's life, and then the following chapter is usually a letter from the uncle to Copper regarding that particular stage in his life. And it was very enlightening, sweet and heartbreaking and all the emotions. And I absolutely loved getting a glimpse of Japan in the 1930s because this book was written when it's supposed to take place. So I loved that aspect. And it was just a very enlightening book, and I highly recommend this to like pretty much any reader because it's very accessible. And honestly, I think these books should be in the curriculum because for young children, not even boys, I was going to say young boys, but it's not even young boys. For children who are kind of finding themselves, this helps out a lot because we are navigating the world and there is so many things that we are trying to figure out along the way. And a lot of times we fall and bump ourselves and just make a lot of mistakes and we get it back up and try again. So I think it also it shows that that's going to happen and that's okay. So honestly, yeah, I really recommend this book to anybody. And the last book that I read in September was Death's Beating Heart by Rob J. Hayes. This is the final book in the War Eternal series and one of my new favorite series. I love this world so much, and if Rob J. Hayes decides to continue any other story in this world, I will jump on that bandwagon so fast I'll get whiplash because I love it that much. But yeah, so we're talking about this book in particular. So if you're not familiar with the War Eternal series, it's about a girl named Eska, and she's a sorcerer. She's a sorcerer in a war, and she's on the losing side. And because she's on the losing side, she gets thrown into a prison at the age of 14. And this story is told from the time that she's 14 to when she's an adult because she's telling the story to the audience. She's reflecting on her past. So she's a child, and then you kind of follow her story to being an adult. And I'm going to be doing a why you should read the series video very soon, so watch out for that. So obviously, overall, I really enjoyed the story. Not as much as the first 3 books, but it was still a solid 5-star book. So the next book I started in September, but I finished the first week of October, and that is The Shadow of What Was Lost. This book took me forever to read. I mean, it's huge, but I started it back in, I think, April. And I just decided that I wasn't in the mood for epic fantasy. Plus, I was listening to the audiobook, and Michael Kramer, who does like the audiobook for Stormlight and Mistborn and pretty much all of Sanderson books, and he also does Wheel of Time as well, narrates this. And although I don't have a problem with that, this book is too similar to those books, so I kind of felt a little like I wanted this to be something else. Not something else. I wanted it to be its own thing. So I decided to put it down, and when I picked it back up, I realized that I needed to reread the whole book all over again, even though it was only a couple months. So I did that. So here we are. Okay, so this book like is amalgamation of whole many things. Like at one point, it starts off like Harry Potter. You got the 3 kids in the magic school, right? And one of the kids has like a secret like past history that's a secret to him too. And then they kind of like venture out, and like stuff happens, and then they venture out and they leave the school. And then on another hand, you have like this like Wheel of Time kind of like adventure where they're on a mission to do something, and you follow you follow a team of people. So then that's the other thing. And then you have like the magic system, which is honestly a bit confusing because they don't talk about the magic system all that much. No, okay, they do. But there's multiple magic systems. But the one is actually forbidden, so they don't actually talk about that magic system all that much. But then there's another magic system that's introduced. And it is honestly so reminiscent to Stormlight. Like, very much so. And even the writing style, like he kept saying the mists. And I'm like, that's Mistborn. And actually I found out recently that James Islington actually read Mistborn and said, you know what, I think I can write that. I think I can write a book. So then he came up with this. So that does not surprise me. But besides all that, it was a solid story. I do wish, because it's so big, that there was a little bit more time spent developing characters and not just following characters, if you know what I mean. Like, we followed our characters, you got to know them, but you didn't really get to know them all that much. What I really enjoyed was the twists and turns of this book. You don't know who's the good guy. You don't know who's the bad guy. They don't know who's the good guy. They don't know who the bad guy is. Like, that constant twist and turns, I loved so much. So overall, I think I give it a 4-star. Not quite 5-star because, you know, again, they mentioned the characters, but I'm extremely excited to pick up the second one, and when I pick it up, it's going to take me a long time to read. Okay, on to my soft DNFs. So the first one, I'm probably going to anger a lot of people. Deadhouse Gates. I've been picking this off and on for, 6 months? No, probably since June maybe. And I'm still, like, I'm at book 4. So I pick it up, read a book, because there's 4 books in here. So I pick it up, I read a book, I put it down for a couple months. So I picked it up, I read through one book, and stopped at book 4. There is no denying that Steven Erikson can write. He can write so well. His characters are really, really good. The bazillion of them, they are really good. The world's really cool, but I am bored so much and confused. Like, I feel like I'm constantly trying to jump into the story, and it's like trying to catch a train that's going too fast. So I don't know. I just can't get into it, which is funny to me because so many people love this book, and I kind of see it. But then I kind of don't. But then they're like, it's the ending, and I have yet to read the ending. So I need to read the ending. So long story short, I need to take a break, and I plan to finish this book by the end of the year. I swear I will, because I'm genuinely curious to see where it goes. Completely switching gears again, I picked up The Children of the Fallen Gods. I've got to about, where did I get? 100 pages in. And I just wasn't feeling it. Just plain and simple, I want to enjoy the books that I'm reading, and I just wasn't feeling it, so there's nothing against it. I'm going to pick it up probably this month, just to get back into it, because I was thinking about it the other day, and I was like, you know what, I'm ready. So I'm probably going to pick it up this month. These two kind of make me a little sad. Well, this one, not so much. So The Dragon Promise, this is the second book by Elizabeth Lim. I think the first book is Six Crimson Cranes. This is the duology, and this is the second one. I just picked it up and I wasn't in the mood for it. Like, it's a YA kind of like fairy tale-esque story. And although I loved the first one, I just wasn't feeling it. My attention kept wandering, and I think I got to about page 50 where I decided to just put it down. But I will continue it. I'm not really in a rush. I feel like I got everything I wanted out of the series from the first book, but I am curious to see where it goes. So I will pick this up eventually at some point. The next book I softy enough is going to probably upset a bunch of people. The Daughter of the Moon Goddess by Su Lin Tan. Okay, so hear me out. The world is beautiful. The cover is beautiful. Like, everything about this book is beautiful. The story is interesting. The characters are interesting. But I am not gripped. And there is a big reason for that. I watch a lot of Chinese drama fantasies. So very much like this book. And I love watching them for the costumes, for the setting, for the bad CGI. You know, I love that stuff. And honestly, if this was one of those shows, I think I would love watching it. But because I have watched so many of it, this just seems very familiar to me. It doesn't seem like something brand fresh and new, where I think that's what a lot of people were very surprised, because it's very different from everything else that they know. But I'm very familiar with this media. I do want to continue on because I genuinely like this story, but I think that it's just not a priority for me right now. I think I got to about 200 pages before I decided to, put it down. So I will continue. I'm hoping to continue by the end of the year, but if it doesn't happen, next year for sure. So I have 2 more books to talk about, and those are the books that I am currently reading. So currently I'm reading The Tower of Thorns by Juliet Marillier. This is the second book in the Blackthorn and Grimm trilogy. Juliet Marillier is more known for her other trilogy, or series, I guess, The Daughter of the Forest, which I absolutely loved way back when I read it. So this is a fresh read for me, and I love this world. It's an Irish setting. I don't know when, like the 1500s or something. I'm not sure what the timeline is, but it's a long time ago. And in this world, there are fae. And I'm not talking about like Sarah J. Maas fae. I'm talking about like scary, creepy, the ones you don't want to mess with. So those are the fae that are in here. And although there's not a lot of magic, there is the magic of the fae. And we are following 2 characters. One character is Blackthorn. She's like a wise woman. She does magic, or she does not magic. She knows about magic, but she's a healer, uses a lot of herbology. She uses herbs for medicine. And then her companion, not lover or partner, but companion Grimm, who is basically like her bodyguard. It's an ongoing thing that they call her bodyguard, but he's not her bodyguard. He's just a companion. They are better when they are together, because they went through a lot of bad things in the first book together. So yeah, so each book kind of follows a different mystery, although it's an ongoing series that's like a big long ongoing series. Each book is about a mystery, which for me is not something I usually lean towards, but honestly, the world, the writing, the characters is what bring me to the series. And if you enjoy like Robin Hobb's writing style, this is nothing like Robin Hobb. It's not like the magic, there's no magic system to speak of. It's just like fae magic. But if you like Robin Hobb for the cozy atmospheric feeling and like the kind of like old feeling writing style, then you can definitely, I think you'll definitely like this one. While a lot happens, it's not a fast-paced book by any means. So if you like that kind of slow-paced, like flowery writing style, definitely check this out. And although the setting at the time in this book takes place in the summertime, I feel like this is just the best, like October, November read for sure. It feels like very much like autumn. I'm loving it. I'll be stupefied if this is not a 5-star read. Okay, and the last book I would like to talk about is The Daughter of Red Winter by Ed McDonald. I'm listening to this on audiobook, and honestly, the audiobook narrator is just fantastic. This takes place in Ireland, so we got, oh, sorry, this takes place in Scotland, so we have Scotland, Ireland, just need one takes place in England and Norway, and that's me. So this takes place in Scotland, don't know what time, when, but there's like clans and kind of like medieval kind of, but it's hard, like they don't really say when it is, and there's no technology to speak of. So in this book, we're following Rain, and Rain has the ability to see ghosts. And in this world, it is a very, very bad thing to see ghosts. So she constantly is having to hide this ability. One thing leads to another. She's had a pretty rough life, and then she eventually finds herself at this basically magic school, but she's not a student. She's like kind of like a servant of like one of the teachers there. So the story has very interesting pacing. And in the beginning, it starts and the story starts off like on a high, like fast-paced note. And then slowly it kind of, you know, slows down, and then there's more of a mystery kind of thing happening. And the character is kind of finding herself in this new world and meeting a bunch of new characters. And, you know, it's interesting, but I'm kind of not loving it as much as I wanted to, but we'll see. I'm like about halfway through right now, and something just happened, so I'm kind of really excited to continue on listening to this today. That was my September and recent read wrap up. Yeah, comment down below. Let me know what you have been reading, if there's anything that you have been loving or you have not been loving that everybody's been loving. And if you've made it to the end of the video, leave a maple leaf for fall. As always, thank you so much for watching. Like and subscribe if you want to, and I hope you have a fantastic day. Bye.